families that we're all here expressing. So today is my day, and I don't mean that just because it's Father's Day. I mean, it is Father's Day, and that's why I'm saying it, but not because I'm a father, but it's because I get to make the dad joke of my liking without any judgments, without any fear, without, oh, I already see some judging faces looking back at me. So a father and a son, decided the son seemed a little lost, and so the father decided to take him for a little walk. It's an older son, about to go off into the world, and the father just looks at the son and says, "So, what are you going to do with your life?" And the son says, "Well, I'm on this spiritual path, so I meditate several times a day, and I'll continue to be on my spiritual path and meditate quite a few times a day as I continue on." And the dad's like shaking his head. Okay, but how do you plan to put a roof over your head? And the son says, "Well, I will meditate several times a day, and God will provide." How are you going to buy all the things that you say you want to buy for yourself? I will meditate several times a day, and God will provide. How are you going to take care of your family, the family you say you want, the kids that you say you want? Dad, I said, I will meditate several times a day, and God will provide. After the walk, the dad goes back home, and the mom's like, "Well, how did it go?" The dad says, "Well, our kid has no job, no money, and no plans for the future, but the good news is that he's starting to call me God." Somebody get on those drums and beat them for me, please. Come on. All right. So I remember, and actually, if I'm not mistaken, it was here at Unity on the Bay, hearing that it's so much easier to become a father than to be a father. And I think that's true in a lot of things. We fall into certain things, and getting to a certain place, it can be the easier part, and then really embodying what it means can be what is challenging. As somebody who, many of you know, I adopted my son. He was just a couple of days old. It was a lengthy adoption process. It took a lot of steps, and a lot of things had to fall in place. And even with all that stuff, I know it was so much easier to become a dad than to really step into being a dad. And so I sit with what it means to be a father, and what it means to be a parent for Lucas, and thinking about the physical needs that have to be met, the emotional needs that have to be met, and the spiritual needs that have to be met. I really recognize that it's a work in progress. Right? It's a work in progress, and it is something that I continue to evolve into, and it is something that I believe all of us, fathers, mothers, parents, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, grandparents, that we're all sort of growing into it, and we're all continuing to evolve what we believe it means to be just that, and to show up for other people from that space. And as I move through my own journey, man, has it given me a greater sense of empathy for my own father and the relationship that we had, and how I may have judged it, may have experienced it, and now I can see it maybe in a different light as a result of just recognizing that as we put labels on ourselves, we're all evolving into what those labels mean, and we are redefining what those labels mean. And I want to share with you a little bit more about God as the Father. Now, first, I want to share with you, I get it, we are unity. So we're not here necessarily to give a human form to God and our relationship with God. And I believe that we can glean some stuff from the ways in which we relate to our understanding of God, and that there is power in seeing how that presence and that essence that we call God, that divinity that is around us and in us and as us, how it can play the role of a father figure, a redefined maybe role of a father figure in our lives. Now, I understand that many of us have different histories with our own fathers, different histories with an old understanding of this paternal God of traditional Christianity and traditional religion. And so I get that some of us may feel a little apprehension about seeing God as Father. I also recognize that some of us, because of our history and because of our old ways of understanding God, may actually welcome and be comforted by the understanding of God as the Father. Wherever you're at in this relationship, I really just invite us to recognize and consider the ways in which this energy and consciousness and the divinity of our very being has a relationship with us, or we have a relationship with it that can really be supported by looking at it from the lens of today, God as Father. Now, Jesus, our master teacher, called God Father. A couple of times he also called God Abba, which is an even more endearing, but also a much more I will follow you and I will do what it is that you are asking me to do type of looking at that father figure. Throughout that relationship, though, what to me is very clear is that that Jesus had a very intimate relationship with God. It was a very intimate relationship. And it was an intimate relationship with the divine that he invited us into, because as Jesus started teaching the people around him about how to pray, for example, he said, begin with our Father, the connection that we have with this source. Now, in practical Christianity and unity, when we do say Father, we're not necessarily thinking in terms of God as being male in the physical sense, but we do look at some of the energies that could represent, like sort of like the beingness, the overall energy of protection and feeling protected, being provided for, being given that which we want, that which we need, that which can support us as we continue to evolve and as we continue to create the life of our dreams. Now, Eric Butterworth goes on even further to then saying, it's not that male figure. He also shares it's not a figure outside of us. He says the Father does not represent God as a being out there. Instead, he represents the Christ of you, your own permanent identity. And we are reminded, the Father who art in heaven, the Father who's in heaven. Well, where is heaven? In unity, we understand that heaven is a place of consciousness. Heaven is something that is going on within us. And so more and more, we are invited to recognize that this presence is our own divine nature. It is within us, and it is something that we not only can have an intimate relationship with, but it is that place within us that we lean on and we allow to surface through us to be able to live in that consciousness of heaven, to be able to create the dreams that we aspire to create the visions that we want to see, not only for ourselves, but for each other and for the world. And I look at my own evolution in fatherhood, right? Because when I started off, it was, I'm the son, and my father's my father. And it was something outside of me. And it was something that I looked outside of me for in how I was being supported. And now, being the father that I am, I realize, oh, wait, that's my job. That's me. That's how I am asked to show up for myself, for my son, for the truth of my being. And so the same way, in a spiritual sense, we have in the past, some of us, really looked outside of ourselves as the place of God. And now we get invited to recognize it's in us. It is as us. And this is the way in which we are continuing to deepen our understanding, not only of God, but then our relationship with God. Now, how can we have a more intimate relationship then with that God of our being? I realize, through my own relationship with my father, right? Like, relationship takes work. How many of you have had intimate relationships? How many of you know it takes work? The same thing happened at the earlier service. More people raised their hand about how hard work is needed than when I first asked about the intimate relationships, because it does take work. It takes time. It takes intention. And it takes an understanding that in this relationship, not only can we lean on it, but that we need to come to it in a healthy way. We need to come to that relationship in a way that is also welcoming and open to the divine that is within us. Be able to see the divine for what it is, just the same way that we want other people to see us and to welcome us for who we are. Now, what is the ways in which we can have the more intimate relationship with the divine? You know, Christine Kane, a Christian writer, said, "We were never created to settle for mere religion. Just as Jesus did not live so that we could have a religious belief system, but rather a life-giving relationship with our Father." And I ask, what is your relationship to the divine as the Father? And is there something in that relationship that is inviting you to become more intimate with it, to heal into it, and to allow it to be manifested more fully, to be supported by it? You know, when I think of intimate relationships and who are the people that I consider myself to be in intimate relationships with, it's the people that I feel safe with. It's the people that I don't need to pretend to be anybody else than who I am, and they'll try not to judge me around it, right? It's the people that I know I can reach out to when I'm in need, when I need help, when I just need somebody to listen, when I need somebody to not only listen, but to guide me in a place, right? Guide me to something else, or remind me about who I am, and also invite me into different ways of being, and remind me about the ways that I really want to show up in the world. And I believe that God is that intimate relationship that provides all of these things, and maybe we haven't put as much time into that relationship than we've done with the external relationships in our lives. And even if we have put a lot of time and effort into it, I believe that there's an opportunity to continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper. For me, the relationship with God is, as the Father, is a relationship with that sense of knowing that with trust and with faith, I know things will work out because I am protected, I am lifted up, I am comforted. You know, the idea or the definition of what a father is or should be has really changed over time, right? You know, if you think about it back a couple of generations, what a father figure was supposed to be is like that strong man, and, you know, like that hard person that you can just count on and will protect you. And as we've continued to evolve, and as our consciousness has evolved, it's invited us to redefine what these labels mean. And so the fathers of today aren't necessarily the fathers of a couple of generations ago, in the sense that we recognize that it's not only those quote unquote masculine energies, male attributes, but that we are the whole person. And so we as fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, whatever it is, we not only get invited to be that power, that strength, that wisdom, that leader that is moving us, but we also get to be sensitive. We also get to be vulnerable, emotional. We get to follow intuition. We get to really be a place of comfort. And these traits are not necessarily only for men or fathers. It's in all of us, and it's available to all of us so that we can, within our own divine nature, seek that which is looking to be expressed into the world and into whatever situation that we may be going through. How are you leaning on that relationship? How are we leaning on God as that father figure? I love one of my favorite lines of the Gospel of John. It says, "The Father is in me, and I am in the Father." That's how deep and intimate a connection it is. That's how deep a relationship it is. The Father is in me, and I am in the Father. And so we know where to go when we need to lean on our own Christhood. That place of heaven, that place that is inward, that place that is our truth. And I get it. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. Right? Like, just because we know that there is something that we can lean on doesn't mean that we always lean on it. You know, we get caught up in a lot of different things, and sometimes we don't go to that place for inspiration, for trust, with our faith, and with even the questions that we may have about how to show up and be in the world. And how can we continue to build a relationship so it becomes second nature? It's like when you first have a friend, you're starting to become friends with somebody, and you call them up every so often, right? But the more it becomes a more intimate relationship, the more that you recognize the closeness that is light-filled and is true, is the reality of our being. Now, the whole verse that I shared from John, it's actually John chapter 10, verse 37 through 38. It says, "If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father." What that tells me is that, one, first and foremost, seek ye the kingdom, right? Seek that energy, that source, seek that relationship, that intimate relationship with the divine, and act from that place. Whether it's you're in question, whether you are having a difficulty, whether you're going to the grocery store, whether you're greeting somebody here at Unity on the Bay, can we act from the place of our Christhood? Can we move into the world from the place of that intimate relationship we have with the divine and be about our Father's business? And the Father's business to me is to really step into our full potential. Because the moment that we step into our full potential, which is our full Christhood, is the moment that not only do we do it spiritually, but it then becomes manifested in the world, in the material world. And that is how we all of a sudden find the dreams that we've been dreaming of, find the courage and the strength to seek out that which has been inspired in us. That is how we truly allow ourselves to be an extension of the love, the light, the joy, the grace that we believe God to be. Buddha says, all know the way, but very few actually walk it. Been there. And I'm glad that we're walking this path together. And I'm glad that we are reminding each other to walk the path that we already know has been implanted in us. And so how can we have that closer walk with the divine? How can we have that closer walk with God? For me, I was thinking, well, I'll just tell you, pray and meditate. Done. Right? It's one of our principles. It's what, and there's power in that. And with any intimate relationship, I think that it's not just about the quality time and just spending time with each other, but that there's work to do, right? Like my relationship with my father is as good as it is. One, because I grew up and got a little bit more empathy in me, but also because I did some of the work. I was like looking through past Sunday talks from Father's Day, and there were quite a few of them that was talking about some of the forgiveness. One year it said how I was going to be doing a lot more forgiveness work, and the following year I was like, ooh, I think I did the forgiveness work that was needed, But how about we go into our time of meditations with that idea? So asking ourselves, in this time of meditation, not only can I just simply be, but is there anything that I can bring to it that will bring a greater sense of intimacy? A deepening of the relationship. And so, yes, spending the quality time, but is there forgiveness work to be done? How many of us have put a lot of expectations on God and been upset when God didn't live up to those expectations? How many of us have been upset with God, angry with God? How many of us have thought that God didn't show up the way that God needed to show up for us? And so we carry that, right? And we may be coming into a different understanding and evolving into a different way of seeing God, and some of that stuff is still within us. So what if we do some forgiveness work and meditations on forgiveness about our relationship with the divine, and even about the way that we showed up for God or as God or whatever that may be, but to really do the work. In all of our relationships, we got to do the work. Why not do it with the relationship we have, the most important relationship we have, which is with the God of our being, our own inner higher self? Now take a breath with me right now. The Father is in me, and I am in the Father. Take another breath. You don't even have to close your eyes. God is in me, and I am in God. God is in you, and you are in God. Now, I just mentioned, having a practice that brings us into that intimate relationship. But even just these moments that we did what we just did, that in itself is creating intimacy. That in itself is creating a deeper sense of trust and faith and connectedness, or understanding and awareness and mindfulness of our union with the divine. I love that last week Rabbi Amy talked about that holy pause. And she shared that it was a holy pause by bringing gratitude into that moment. Anytime that we remember our truth, anytime that we remember the truth of God, our relationship with God as our Father, as our Mother, as the essence of who we are, anytime we do that, that is a holy pause. And the more that we take holy pauses, the more it will become second nature. And the more we won't have to remind ourselves, because it's just simply a way of being. God is in me and I am in God, as we seek first the kingdom and remember that the presence of God is in us, and we've got to seek an understanding of it. And we've got to do the work to be able to really trust and have faith in it. Our destiny, and that is what we are continuing to evolve into in this relationship and in our definition of who we are together. Myrtle Fillmore says, you and our co-founder, you and I, the offspring of God mind, have the wonderful privilege of forming our lives of God's substance, of instilling into our soul and body consciousness the intelligence and energy of the Father, and shaping our destinies as we will. Take a moment not only to recognize the intimate relationship that God is seeking to have with each of us, but the destiny that we want to experience in life. When those two things come together, our visions become a reality. Who we are is an expression of the divine, and people see it, feel it, and know it, and are inspired by it. And more importantly, we get to be anchored in our truth. And that anchoring will support us in whatever is taking place in our lives. God is in me, and I am in God. Let that be our mantra today, throughout the week, and as we move into whatever lies ahead. Happy Father's Day and namaste. Thank you for visiting our YouTube channel. We post new videos every week to keep you positive, present, and inspired to your divinity. So now please click on the subscribe button below and hit the notification bell. Remember to share this with your friends and family. We love you, we behold the Christ in you, and we see you doing great things.